Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Good evening, folks, and welcome back to What's the Point, the podcast that peels back the polished press releases and asks what's really going on behind your local council's doors. I'm your host, Greg Lennon, still independent, still dodging the party machines to the despair of North Lanarkshire SNP group, and unlike other political leaders in North Lanarkshire Council, still not on Jim Logue's payroll. Gerry?
Yeah. Greg.
Now tonight we're doing something a little different. We're taking a closer look at two very different beasts, Edinburgh City Council and North Lanarkshire, and doing a wee bit of comparison. Two councils, same country, but widely different in how they function democratically, politically, and how they engage both elected members and the public, and most importantly, are they serving the people or just the party machine? Spoiler alert, one's a cultural heartbeat of Scotland and the other's, well, North Lanarkshire, Gerry. We're asking big questions tonight.
Missed the success in Edinburgh.
Are councils still doing what they're meant to do, or in North Lanarkshire case, have they become a political kindergarten for careerists and party climbers and loyalists?
How dare you, Craig?
Or do we need political parties or do we even need political parties at a local level anymore, or independents, the only ones still actually listening? And with the Scottish Parliament elections on the horizon, is there any hope, change at the top, or just around a slogan roulette? We'll talk about the games, the groups, the gagging orders, and yes, we're live on TikTok too at 8 o'clock, I think it is. So if we're going down the rabbit hole tonight, then we're taking you with us. Joining me as always is a man with a cravat, a backbone and an invisible helmet, the Belsy Hill bowler himself, my good pal in constitutional crime, Mr. Gerry Brennan. Gerry, how are you?
Very well, Greg, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here.
And also tonight, Gerry, a guest who's no stranger to radical politics,
royalty,
outsider movements, and sticking two fingers up to that establishment, the one and the only Mr. Bonnie Prince Bob, here for real fireside revolutionary chat. How are you, Bob?
I'm not bad, my man. Thank you for having me. Real pleasure.
So strap in tonight. We're talking function failure and whether your council's working for you or just waving for a committee chair. Now, before we go on, Gerry, I think we've got a quick apology to make to the good folks at home. Many would have listened in last week, Gerry, and unfortunately,
production
team managed to mess up. I was nearly ready to say a different word there, but mess up the video footage.
Right.
So we are working frantically to try and get that episode back up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if we can't get all of the show back up, we'll do our level best to get the good bits.
Aye, especially because we know there's so many people actively listening and jotting down notes.
Many more than we anticipated.
Oh, goodness me.
With a stopwatch as well.
I thought I was so highly regarded within North Lanarkshire political class, but there you go.
Shameful.
So, just for those good folks at home, if you could do us a wee favour, you're watching us on TikTok later on, like, subscribe, and all the other nonsense that comes along with these channels.
Yep.
Right, let's get started. Where do you want to start this?
We have royalty.
We do.
In the chair next to us. I would like to know how and when this political machine and Colossus started. Is the east from the beast in terms of underhand politics through there. So I'd like to know from Bob how he ended up here tonight, what his political philosophy is, and his drive to absolutely demolish and destroy all things political in the east of Scotland and beyond.
No small. Do I need to lean into your?
No.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've always been very political. I've always been a very political man. But do you mean in terms of how, in terms of contemporary Scottish politics?
Well, even from a young. From a young guy, did you go to uni?
No.
What did you study? Tell us a wee bit about your early work life, and then why you end up being.
I kind of ran away with the circus, if I'm honest.
Brilliant.
In relative terms, you know. But I never went down the university route. Like, you know, when I was a young man, I was actually for many years. It sounds like something a Mike Lee film, but I toured the working men's clubs of Scotland and beyond,
right,
as a sound engineer for cabaret acts. And I've done that from when I was a young laddie.
Right.
So I've seen the heart, I've seen the innards of every man's miners' welfare club.
That probably bumped into East House's miners.
Up and down in Falkhouse, all these places. You know what I mean? When it was literally, as a kid, it was a really very strange kind of, very strange origin story. Like, but in fairness, sometimes I do.
You must learn a lot. Like, when you're on the road, you're going to meet
it
characters.
took many years, but many years after the fact, I did reflect on, you know, where did that maybe influence me politically to a certain extent. I think it did in many ways, but it was also. I wished I had, you know, the ubiquity of the camera now, which is part of our culture. But back then, you know, maybe I would have maybe at one time or other had like maybe the odd disposable camera or something like that. But if I'd done a photo study of all these inside these dressing rooms and these working men's club like up and down the land, you know, it would have been like a Turner Prize winning. Do you know what I mean? It would have been an incredible array of, you know, you got to imagine what you know, the endless sort of iterations of cabaret acts, like, you know what I mean, pasted to the walls.
Who did you meet?
Places.
Did you meet any big stars on your
big
travels?
Stars, like, you know what I mean? You didn't tend to meet big stars doing, like, you know, what men's clubs and stuff.
Right,
I mean,
no,
it's just
fair
big
enough.
star imitators, like, you know, there's a lot of Freddie Mercury impersonators.
But anybody who went from the clubs onto anything that was meaningful?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, not really. Not most people are kind of. It's almost like the sort of like the graveyard for the sort of like the performers. You know what I mean? It is like the real Phoenix thing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I was like literally in, like, you know, South Wales, like the middle of Wales, like, you know, working men's clubs.
So all over the UK, not just
the UK, like, you know, the Black Country. You know, I can remember being like 16, 17-year-old. And I'd be in like the north. You'd be like Spennymoor and Chesterley Street and Hockley Lane, all these weird places in the northeast. And it was around about the time where all the what do you call it, the ram raids were going on. Do you remember in the northeast in the 90s?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, I was in the States.
You know, you always knew you were getting near the club because there'd be more and more houses like burning. It was completely mental.
You knew you were in the right place.
Yeah, and they'd be like, you know, like. Give us a pound to look after your car. If you're different, it won't be there when you come back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just you'd get like harassed by gangs of like your young team. You know what I mean? And like that was the real vibe. You know, it was mental. Right. So it's true. It's funny. Nobody has actually ever asked me that.
There you go.
A fair play.
There you go.
the history. You know what I mean? But I think it's interesting because many years later I did reflect on that particular period of my life and why, in some ways, I think it does kind of. It gives you an appreciation of working class culture, I think, on a certain type of working class culture.
See that time scale, that kind of early to mid 90s. That was my kind of. I didn't travel the length and breadth of the UK's working men's clubs, but I played football when I was younger and I got a scholarship. I went to the States, but at that same time, the 92 election, that was when I formulated my own political ideas, and I had to be away from Scotland to be able to look at it from the outside in.
What you mean by that.
And I don't know, maybe something similar happens as you're travelling through the different countries.
I don't know about that. I'd be more inclined to agree with you what you're saying there about when I've been away. You know, when I've been elsewhere in the world, and I often find that is when you get a more objective sense. Maybe because you're comparing where you're at. But I've had that. Very much so, you know what I mean, in different countries that I've been in, especially like I've spent a lot of time, you know, in the past in Cuba and then in Jamaica, and I'm always interested in the politics of anywhere that I go.
Right.
You know, that's you find out, and I think it's really interesting, especially when you see, especially in third world countries, especially like Cuba and Jamaica, totally different places. You know what I mean? The only thing that unites them is really the weather. You know, but in terms of like when you think about it's almost like things are failing here all the time as they are anyway. Yeah. But failure in a third world country takes on a different kind of thing again. It's almost like, especially like in Jamaica, for example, you'll see, it's obviously Cuba's got this whole socialist thing going on, but it's like in Jamaica, it's like you'll see they try to implement kind of what I would call like kind of conventional neoliberal strategies that they obviously see work elsewhere or are supposed to work elsewhere, but they try to implement them in somewhere that clearly can't work. And it's you'll see this happen all the time. They'll bring in the same sort of road penalties and stuff for that you might find in a developed country. But they're already like got issues. They've got 7 people in a car. These are taxis. You know what I mean? So you find that all these kind of like bizarre. It's just ways of this extracting cash.
Seat belts.
You know what I mean? But it's the same thing. You know what I mean? But it's totally unworkable. So they try to implement something, you know what I mean, and then inevitably they end up just abandoning it because it's just like, so I always find those things quite intriguing, like, you know.
So we've only got an hour, so we'll fly through this a wee bit, right? So you're mid-90s.
Yes, so
you're formulating your political.
I think I came from a political family. Like, my old man was a very political guy, you know, and as you know, I mean, my man was like a WRP guy, you know, which was Workers' Revolutionary Party, and that was a very communist kind of thing, you know. And he was clearly, you know, hyper political, and it was Thatcher's era and everything, you know what I mean? So he was incredibly mobilised against that and everything, you know. And I always say that, like, folk my age, I remember saying to Norrie Harmon, a friend of mine, an artist friend of mine, you know, it's like, those of us of a certain age who are actually kind of Thatcher's children, even if we weren't the kind of immediate kind of those that suffered immediately from Thatcher's policy.
What an impact!
Whether, you know, obviously, you know, if you were in a mining community, whatever, then it was like tenfold in terms of what that was. But those of us who had political parents or whatnot, you know what I mean, whether they were middle class or working class or whatever they were absorbed, they were completely and utterly captivated by that struggle. And so in many respects you suffered as well, you know what I mean, because your parents, if you had an old man like mine, it's like he was involved in politics, you know, he was working and involved in politics, so it's like, you know, and I think a lot of people shared that experience as well, do you know what I mean? There was such a seismic change happening to our culture and our society, and those who were class conscious and politically astute at that time were fighting against it. They were naturally mobilised to fight against that. And if you were the sort of offspring of that, you were either involved in that, which I wasn't really involved in it, but you were definitely, you experienced the impact of that, not the absence, if you like.
What shocked us was North Lancashire's a massively industrial sort of area, former coal mine, steel works, all that kind of stuff. And again, your heritage, that industrial past, one of the things that we had today, was it last year or the year before? The miners' strikes, it was the 40-year anniversary of the miners' strike.
You brought the motion.
To be the one to bring the motion forward to full council. You've got a Labour group there that didn't bring in. So to
complete
me,
detachment from that.
It's a complete
history of why they are there and everything. You know what I mean? Like the complete erasure of their roots.
That kind of leads me into my first question to you. So really, in effect, if we look at it across the board, especially within Scotland, do you think Labour still connects to the normal working people?
No, but then I don't believe in any of our contemporary political parties serve any purpose. I believe that the main,
apart from reform,
well, the main you did say you were Canadians,
sorry, on terms
but that's that thing, you know, and it's like, you know, the landscape for reform to capitalise and opportunistically capitalise is the failure of the contemporary political class and their political parties, because this masquerade of differences is just that. You know, it's the same with the media class, the political class. It's just a pantomime. And you know, it's very much now the professional classes. I mean, when I came in here and I said to Gerry, and Gerry explained that you'd been councillors, that you were independent. He says, we're both councillors, and I immediately said, oh, you're obviously independent then.
But we need to make this absolutely clear for all listeners tonight.
Disclaimer here.
Tonight we are here as private citizens speaking our
truth. There's never not a great time to put a disclaimer in. You know? I mean, I couldn't agree more. I'm very, very impressed. But I think
just for my wee pal tonight who's listening.
When I grasped this notion, because I did apologise, look, I'm really ignorant, I haven't checked what the vibe was and all the rest of it. He's going boom. He's told me about it, and I immediately said, like, well, I presume you're obviously independent, you know. And then he goes, well, then we were in the SNP, and I was like, the SNP, and the first thought I had was like, well, how did you get selected? Like, you know, I mean, not without even knowing you, like, you know what I mean, kind of like going. you've got this thing going on and the rest of it. You immediately go like, well, that selection process.
They didn't know.
Well, this is what I'm saying. You know, we know that whole process is just a farce in itself.
Absolute
you know what I mean? And that's replicated in every single political party, in every contemporary political party and council and all the rest of it. And that's the thing. I think that's important. I think that you know, perhaps. You know, and I very much appreciate you asking me to come and join us this evening, and I'm delighted to be here. And but I feel that sense that there's still far too much of the public who consider themselves to have some degree of political acumen, who have not yet made the connection to grasp fully how much of a farce this whole thing is, and that the extant, which is a term that I got rebuked for using, I'm perfectly entitled to use it, and I shall do, the extant political class are a bankrupt entity, essentially, right across the board. And what we need to be doing as a society, as a culture, as a people, is not becoming so apathetic with politics that we just abandon it altogether, which is what they actually want us to do. Is we have to re-engage and we have to start to take a wee bit more autonomy and control over how that works. That's why I'm interested in local council. That's why local council I think is interesting, because power begins at home, really. I mean, for one of a better term, right? And local councils were essentially pathologised over the last 20 or 30 years deliberately by the same political classes who actually became the monopolisers of them. And they did this in order to drive a sense of complete and utter abject apathy within their general population. So it was a foregone conclusion. And the point is this, that up until maybe, I don't know, you'd have to look at the stats or whatever, but maybe the mid-90s or something, or maybe early 90s, I think, local democracy, you know, it did have political parties kind of like within them, but they were by no means the dominant force. It was only really from that period forward that political parties really focused on taking monopoly of local council and local government.
Because it sets the foundational stone of behaviours, work, income, jobs.
I think planning is a big one as well, especially in a big city like Edinburgh or something like that. You know, I mean, if you control the local council, then that's a great way into actually making sure that you can secure a lot of nice sweetheart deals for you know, prospective developers and the rest of it. So a situation like you're talking about Lanarkshire Council, North Lanarkshire Council, and the fact that you alluded to the fact, just as we were starting to talk there, that,
council
you know,
with the largest amount of brownfield sites in the entire country.
Yeah, right, okay, but the officers essentially making all the decisions, right? Yeah. Well, that's the same for Edinburgh Council.
Maybe just point out as well, but that was a best value report in relation to an Audit Scotland paper. It was published.
Indeed.
So they've confirmed that. So we'll just
there's
if anybody wanted to afford some scrutiny, if they were sort of mental enough to actually want to spend their time watching council meetings and stuff like that, what they would very quickly ascertain is that most elected councillors are teapots. They didn't
to the bat for right.
Respectfully, clarification, Standing Order 46 maintains that you have to give sufficient time for a point of order to be substantially made and understood. I don't know what the standing orders were that were made by Councillor Lennon, because they were numerous, but it did seem a very quick decision on your behalf to be able to assimilate that information.
Thanks for your low opinion of me, Councillor Crichton, but I understood it perfectly
not at all,
clear.
not at all.
And I don't need any lectures. I do appreciate that. But I thank you for your comment anyway. Council, we're moving on.
Is it easy? No. Do I like it? No, I don't. But do I do it? Yeah, I do.
Again, what they're doing, they often have no particular historical relationship to the environment that they're actually counselling for. In Edinburgh, it's a kind of like, you know, it's a kind of collective satire that we've kind of got, which is the same in every council really. But you know, in Edinburgh, it's like there's this the local councillor. It's a weird one, right? Because the party candidate, right, is a particular type of like party choice, right? The party selection is like, right, we need somebody that's either extremely obsequious, malleable, one of our own, somebody that we're spending our evenings and mornings with, like, you know what I mean, however it is, right? It's like that sense of party selection is much more kind of active, kind of like, right, we need to make sure whoever the constituent candidate is like able, you know, it's cloak and dagger stuff, it's quite heavyweight, right? Because that's a bit more what do they call it, frontline politics, like, you know what I mean, they've got the name for it, like that's it, frontline politics, right? So you got those guys, right? But then at council level, it's more like Teapot Central, basically, because it's the officers, it's officials that are making the decisions, and that's the party political. That's where things are much more darker and sort of like, you know, mystical in terms of how things occur.
I don't know how deeply you've delved into the Edinburgh City Council.
Deeper than they'd like to know.
Is it?
Some of the anonymous emails I get sent from on a weekly basis is like.
Is it the case in Edinburgh, as it is elsewhere, that many and most of the powers are already delegated away through schemes of delegation?
Absolutely.
From
but these
elected
are
members
historical. Like, look, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's almost
two officers. Sorry, just to finish that.
Officials are run the council, and like who are these people? They're non-accountable. They've got all kinds of things going on. I mean, even the I mean,
decent salary scale.
Great salaries. Great. I mean, it must be a great gig.
Really,
come on, it's a bad gig to get.
Right, okay.
£100,000 a year.
Worth every penny. Worth every penny. And the 10 grand for each by-election.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. You know,
it's a bad gig if you can get
100%.
That's not
you know what I mean?
And sometimes if you leave
pension.
Yeah, so if you accept maybe voluntary early retirement, you might get a.
There's no. Didn't get me wrong, right? I mean, I've run for Parliament, and you guys obviously you got this. There's lots of benefits to getting on the public purse, right? It's not the worst place to find yourself in one way or another. And if you play the game a particular way, and if you abandon integrity and these sort of things, then you can go a long way. Do you know what I mean? But if you actually have a conscience, right? You might do something like, I don't know, like set up a radio station.
You might end up doing a podcast.
You know what I mean? Like something like that. You know what I mean? You might want to try and let folk know, like, you know. Have you seen that They Live film, that John Carpenter film? I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? You might just want to sort of.
How would you change it? I mean, if you could.
All you can do is disrupt, right? All you can do at this point in the game, change is a long-term thing. You know what I mean? It's like, and we've got to accept, like, where we've reached morally, socially, societally, we're bankrupt, right? And pretending that we're no is participating in the pantomime, okay? And that's why, you know, even seeing where you're coming from and this sort of thing, is like, it's important. At the end of the day, people are being exploited. They're living ever more diminished existences. They're getting screwed for every corner. You know what I mean? They can't get their beds without spending 20 quid. You know what I mean? It's a ridiculous state of affairs, and an incredibly, vastly, vulgarly, you know, indulgent wealth is kind of like, you know, operating the controls of the basic functions of society. And whatever people want to get into arguments about socialism or communism or all these kind of things, it's like, I'll tell you something interesting. I mean, you asked me, you did probe, like, you know, we have to reflect on how many years the sun has turned round this planet that I've been forced to exist on it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going, right, okay, well, one of the things that I think is interesting, right, in terms of maybe why I might operate in the way that I've chose to operate over recent years, in terms of like, there are very specific reasons as to why I would do and behave in the manner that I have done over the last few years. I'm not going to share them all with you, you know what I mean? But it's like,
we'll get you back.
There's no real issue to either, but you know, we could be here a long time, right? But it's like, one of the things I think is worth considering, right, is that guys of my age and our age, essentially, do you know what I mean? It's like, I still have a sense of the aspects of what it was like to live in a country, in a society that still had the remnants of some sort of social democracy, the infrastructure of it still within our general
before the right to buy.
Now, with all due respect, I think you're maybe just a couple of years older than me, right? But it's like, but for me, I remember certain things in like the city in the 80s in like the GPO, for example, or something like that. Here's an example, right? You think about it, right? There was a time in the 80s or something where, you know, they went for the privatisation. Obviously people were opposed to it. There was all kinds of issues, but you know, eventually, you know, this steamrolled it through and all the rest of it, and sold people various ideas, right to buy British Gas or Colsid or whatever it is, whatever they're doing, right? But there was that sort of sense that, like, you know, if they tried to come for the post office back then, it would have been like, people would have been like, nah, you're not doing that. That's not happening. What are you talking about? Nah. And I always remember, as I've kind of paid attention to the various stages of decline that we've all been experiencing, witness to, like, you know. I remember when it was like, when they'd done the post office and it was like on page 3 of the paper or something, it's like the post office privatised. And then it was like, and mind they flipped it within 24 hours, and everybody that had got their dollar in and that doubled it, like got their money back. It's basically just a pure, utter, in full face scam by the establishment classes and that. They'd all been tipped off. They all knew, boom, put your money in. 2 minutes later, they were quids in. Do you know what I'm saying? And it was like, when that happened, I think that was a really kind of like an important. Now there are lots of important points, times on the map of like what's been going on or whatever, but I think that was a sort of that sense of going like that perpetual, consistent attack and erosion on the systems and services that people had for a functioning community and society. Just to make the point, though, is like, because an institution like that or whatever like that, it's not just really about, you know, the function itself. It's like it's something deeper. You know what I mean? Like when you went, when people went to the post office or whatever, there's community elements to these things and all the rest of it, and that's. These things have gone now. Obviously, we have got a different modality. We've got the internet, all these kind of things. You know what I mean? But it's almost like, you know, just the way that like it was almost like the last one to go down or something. Do you know what I mean? Like in that through that period or something.
We've spoken about this before about during that time frame, the Tel Sid and, you know, the selling off it. Like when I was growing up, obviously a wee bit before you and Greg, there was British Rail. There was British Leyland, there was British Airways, there was British Petroleum, British Steel, British Telecom, all these things that in some way you felt that you had a stakeholder in, right? So you belonged to something bigger than yourself. And when these were sold off as commodities, we became commodities.
Absolutely.
As well. And that was the change. Back to council housing. I've been involved in social housing for 25 years sort of thing, but for me the biggest piece of legislation that came in and changed the entirety of British politics was about housing. I mean, there's nothing more fundamental in terms of a human right to have a roof over your head. That becomes a commodity as well.
100%.
And at that point in time, it's you're pitted against each other.
Totally.
It's all competition. And that's just escalated.
We've been in this kind of long kind of unpleasant process of being converted from citizens into consumers, essentially. Do you know what I mean? And that's really
the manufacturers' plans just take
a democracy of fullness.
Your function is to produce what you can and then to consume, and that's that.
And not strike.
Yeah, exactly. And not strike. To have all your kind of rights removed or something. I think when it comes to, like, you're asking there about the comparatives, or this was your sort of the spine of what you're saying about between the councils, and we were talking about how people involved in politics. See, I think there's a problem as well. Politics has become, I would say, it's like what did I say? It's like it's like politics is like a middle class sport. Culture is like a middle class hobby or something. You know, in that sense, it's like the notion of like. It's almost like political punditry now, right? Is this sort of thing where it's like folk who know it's a rigged game. Maybe it's like boxing punditry or something. I don't care, but it's like folk that know.
Do you think it's rigged, Greg?
But folk that know it's a rigged game.
Aye, 100%.
And it's like it kind of, in a way, like a lot of that is detrimental to actually changing anything, because it then becomes a kind of fetishisation of just talking about. Like the things that are never going to particularly change. They say it's all, you could just change all the people, it'd be all the same, the same problems, the same sort of Machiavellian sort of things going on, the same
manipulation,
all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Because they're all operating under the same system, really. You know, so that's why I think at this particular stage we're really. I mean, things are really grim. I don't think there's any way to sort of suggest otherwise, and that's why it's quite insulting when you're subjected to cultural expressions that kind of like pretend, you know, which is all that you know. I'm a great fan of the great social critic who's passed away, Mark Fisher, and Fisher was very fierce critique of, as many others were, of neoliberalism and the neoliberal era and where we're at, and how that, you know, affects, you know, all aspects of life and culture essentially. You know, it's not just about like opening up to the market and just abandoning everything to the market or otherwise. There are deeper implications of it. But his point about I've lost my train of thought there. But I was just saying about I'll come back to me.
Listen, again, I've often explained it in this show. We've been doing this podcast for over a year now, Gerry.
A year and a half.
So, a year and a half. And within that
2
year
in
and a
July.
half, with that 2.5, some people will be very angry at that prospect, Gerry. But within that, councils used to be a broad church. There used to be a broad church, retired teachers and various other things, and then made up of community members and various other people.
Excuse me, I just remembered my point there. That he really essentially recognised that the thing that keeps everything supposedly together now in the neo is essentially PR, and that's all that political parties are able particularly to do, is just to create PR and then regurgitate and buy into their own kind of
you look at the level of honesty within speeches and various, everything's tapered, everything's all watered down. We don't want to offend, we don't want to do this, we don't want to... I'm sorry, if a politician's standing up for an area for, let's say, an undue budget cut or something, you should be able to go for the rooftops and basically say your opposition towards that. We're in a culture of fear that I think in relation to elected members, and I'll come back onto that broad church point, where it used to be, where you had individuals who were retired teachers, retired solicitors, retired this, that, and made up with other people, but everybody had a community interest. Everybody was invested in the local area. You look at the calibre of politician that's being produced now, particularly for local government. Your description of teapots, I couldn't have come up with a better description myself if I tried. But the position of that idea and that aspect is that idea is, you have to, as soon as you go in under the party machinery, you have to nod, you have to keep your mouth shut, you have to vote with your whip. Absolutely. You can't break at a local government level when it's coming down to a ward area. You can't break for your whip. Nope. We were indoctrinated into the idea of, if you've got an issue and it comes up, then you just get up and go to the toilet. You don't participate in that vote. Well, I'm sorry, no, I'm going to make my opinion known and felt, because again, that's what I'm elected to do.
It's interesting you say that. It goes both ways, doesn't it? Because it's almost like it's true that we live in a culture of fear. So if you are you have a sense of political integrity or other, and you're involved at a council level, then you're conflicted as to what you can and can't do. I don't think that's a universal experience for most councillors or most people involved in politics. Most of them are happy to actually, obsequiously participate. But then the fear obviously is inverse as well, in that the system itself, those parties or there is a fear there from themselves that they will have that type of reaction. And I give you a good example of that.
They're terrified.
They are terrified. I'll give you a really good example of it. There's a stalwart socialist working class, James Connolly. You should get Jim Slavin onto the show. You should have a chat with Jim. Because he's a fantastic local working class intellectual, brilliant guy, runs the James Connolly Society, and the council, Edinburgh Council, is now operating essentially as a hostile entity to its citizens, and has done for a long time. But that is now the glove. The mask is off. There's no concern whatsoever for traditional legacy citizens, as I would maybe refer to them as traditional citizens of the city. And more and more, we've experienced, a significant period of social cleansing and gentrification that's utterly erased entire cultures, entire sections of the city. And this is it's outrageous. And one of my big beefs with Scotland and Scottish culture and stuff is, it's like, ironically, as an artist, as a producer, as a filmmaker, or whatever, it's like, I don't believe Edinburgh is well served at all. Edinburgh's the capital city of Scotland, and it has no actual media. Edinburgh doesn't actually have any original media. Now, that's not by accident, that's by design. You find me another capital city in Europe, a major capital city, especially one that's Edinburgh. It's got an arts festival, biggest arts festival in the universe, apparently, right? It's got a parliament, right? It's got all these other things going on there, but we don't have any media of any note in the city, and we certainly don't have any broadcasting that would be ready. Can you imagine that? Imagine Pacific Key goes, right, we're not going to be in Glasgow anymore, we're going to be in Dundee, and 90% of our programming is going to be about things for Dundee, and that's all that Scotland gets. That's the law of Scotland. So the problem that we've got is, like, we've obviously got an East-West Coast issue with media and stuff, but Edinburgh's reasons for not having any significant media is political. That's a political decision. That's not because it somebody forgot to do something. Right. That's 100% political decision, because the narrative of how Edinburgh is presented, commodified, sold out with Edinburgh for various private enterprise interests It's not the narrative that would necessarily be happening if there were other folk involved in that. And quick point of the reason I'm going to Jim Slavin is Slavin took on the council as part of the People Story campaign because the council tried to basically commandeer one of the oldest buildings in the city, where we've got a working class museum. It's basically it's called the People Story. It's on the high. It's on the high street, and it's basically told the sort of sort of story of working class Edinburgh and the traditions of the old town and all the rest of it. And it's really the last sort of symbolic connection between the old town, which has been essentially entirely cleansed of working class communities entirely, to the wider city. It's a very important living document of that thing. And the council wanted to just take over it basically and just remove it. Shut it down. So they shut it down basically because they said they couldn't staff it and all this. And that's obviously the first stage to actually just
manage the climb.
Exactly, precisely.
Absolutely.
And Jim took the council on, and the reason it was so significant was because that campaign, they as soon as they faced that pushback, they crumbled. Right, and
I take it Mr. Slavin's not an elected member.
No, Mr. Slavin's a local. He's a tour guide, and he's a. We'll
check it. We'll definitely check him out.
Jim's the runs the James Connolly Society, so he's a James Connolly aficionado. He's nothing about James Connolly doesn't ken. But basically, Jim. What Jim did, he managed to get a campaign together. But what I thought was significant about that campaign was that it made me feel confident because you know that they're brittle, what I mean. And you've seen how quickly they crumbled when they actually experienced some authentic community kickback. And that I thought other communities should take courage from that campaign everywhere across the board, right, and realise that submission and that apathy and that sense of whatever, it's they kind of want you to feel.
Did it coincide with an election?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't
just on its own.
Yeah, it was just last year.
Right.
But it was more just but again, what we recognised when we were in that council meeting, I mean, this is just one small victory against a million losses. I have to say. Do you know what I mean?
You're still waiting on us. You're still waiting on us.
It's by no means. I mean, but I think the important thing was. It was important to see that they really didn't like the heat on it. Now, they might still come back in for that building. It's the story is not entirely finished with what might happen there, but it does show that if you really if you manage to get a campaign together, if you get things together and the right sort of things in place, they're not as robust as what they like to appear.
I've got an interesting point because I think you've just kind of opened up something for me here in relation to what process was used. Did you use a petition process? Did you use some?
It was more just a public campaign. It more just it was more like the sort of speed at which we all kind of kicked back against it.
Yeah.
And I think they just were like, we didn't need this heat, no over this, because they've got their finger in too many other things, what I mean. It's they didn't really need that heat, what I mean. They kind of operate in a very kind of the press is pretty controlled in Edinburgh, like I was just sort of saying, what I mean. So it's I think that was the first time for a while, but I mean there are other things happening currently in Edinburgh that are equally more outrageous to a certain extent than that, because there are homes that are now being threatened. There's in Gorgie, there's a whole
fine part of the
flats. I can't remember the name of the flats, but there's a whole old sort of flats there that are basically they've not been looked after, right? They basically same thing, managed to decline, and then they're like, right, we're knocking on these people's homes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're going right, and then you'll know that those folk, and everybody's getting interviewed. The Living Rent Union folk, they done a piece on it, and they were interviewing folk. And
the traditional Gorgie tenements.
It's not Gorgie. It's more like it's a housing block. I need to remember the name of the.
Similar experience in North Lanarkshire with the high-rise flats.
But you'll find this. Where was that then?
Could be an argument there.
In my ward. It was in the area towards the Calder Park area as you're heading out to the M8.
We've got a tower.
What was the name of that area though? Did they knock that down? Did they?
So it was part of the Corsington area.
It's called, was it?
And there was 3 tower blocks in there, and as part of they call it the tower reprovision strategy.
That's not near Gowthrap or that, is that?
No. This is a separate one. So they knocked, in order to build 64 new houses.
Yeah, we have to
tore
do
down 300.
Yeah, this is what they do though.
Yeah.
You know, this is what they do.
300.
It's the biggest economic driver in the authority
and then
is
they've
house
got
building.
that whole bollocks of like affordable housing.
I mean,
It's not social housing.
No. Here it is mostly. There's a new build programme that North Lanarkshire Council have been involved in, and where I spoke on Radio Scotland about this where a 2-bedroom ex-local authority flat in North Lanarkshire, average price is about 90 grand for the council to procure.
A two-bedroom.
Right. Yeah. A mid-terrace will run you about 135. So price. I mean, the Edinburgh prices relative to North Lanarkshire prices
astronomical.
There's no. It's like measuring apples and custard pies. It's just. But if you want to build a new council house in North Lanarkshire, it's going to run you close to £300,000. There you go.
Edinburgh's buying its own council house still back. That's how knackered it is, right? That's how knackered it is. And then, there are other issues as well. It's like people like Reform come in and exploit other decisions that will get made as well.
I can't see that. They seem
in Edinburgh, for example, like, what I'm saying is like, you know what I mean? You see, whole housing schemes are provided for certain demographics, and Reform just jump on that.
Look at the Dummy Dykes. The Dummy Dykes, for example, the Dummy Dykes has been completely gentrified.
Yeah. No, Dummy Dykes hasn't really been gentrified. Well, a lot of it's more private now.
Yeah.
They've clad it and stuff. They did stuff to it.
They were going to knock it down.
Yeah, the Dummy Dykes is deliberately ill-served by the council. It's like there's other more, like Jim's Slaven lives in Dummy Dykes. You want to talk about that? He'll
my buddy
because Dummy Dykes is another one where it's like there's no shop in the scheme, there's no bus service, there's not been any bus service. They did actually eventually win some sort of bus service, and it's not been consistent. There's all kinds of stuff. It's like to me, like, this is the thing as well with Edinburgh. It's like, it's genuinely like, with all joking aside, it's like it's wrong what's been done. Like, it's sad. Do you know what I mean? It's sad the way that the city has become this just obsession, this kind of like, how do you put it, like this just kind of absolutely ridiculous fixation on the commercial centre of the city and what that's about, and it's to the complete detriment of the wider city and the wider and who would traditionally go to the city.
It was interesting listening. Sorry, Greg. It was interesting listening to Bob talking. I watched a wee video clip of you this afternoon, and you're walking through, and you're talking about that type of thing. I almost got the train spotting feeling about it at the beginning of what you were saying. And at the end, you talk about the gentrification of the city, the fact that you've got the festivals that come in, and it pushes, normal Edinburgh people out of the way of their city because they can't own it and belong it, and yet you still love it.
You can't not love Edinburgh, right? It's an amazing city. It's a beautiful city, and but that alone, those vistas can't sustain indefinitely. Do you know what I mean? They're there for a bit, but they've also been hyper commodified and commercialised, right? And okay, that can go on, but none of that. We wanted to push.
Do you feel pride in the festival?
We wanted to push for a tourist tax because we were saying like, let's get a tourist tax, and like I was, when I've run for council, I've run both for Holyrood and I've run
21,
and I've run for the council as a matter of principle. Basically, people might, people get wide with me sometimes, like, you're not a serious candidate and all this. I was like, what? You try to say that they're serious candidates? Like, what are you trying to tell me? My name's on the ballot, right? Yeah. You've got a choice. If you're an elected, you can vote for me or no. What is it that I've put myself on the ballot for? Oh, I want social housing. I want a shutdown on PBSA. I didn't want student flats. I want a tourist tax. I want that money taken for the tourists put back into communities, the local communities. I want to see things. It's like these are sensible policies. These are baseline socialist policies, right? I feel that we need, and that's why I would always say, we're post politics. Reject the political class. If there's an independent that aligns with your principles, vote for that independent. And if there's a socialist party or a communist party, vote for the socialist party or a communist party. Why? Because we're at a point where we need to be thinking about capitalism. We come from an era, right, where the concept of what the political economic system that we were under, we understood it to a certain extent. People understood structural critique of capital to one extent or another. It was part of the diet of working class culture. It was part of the diet of socialism. It was sometimes people would get carried away with it and all the rest of it, and it could be parodied as a result of that. Fine, fair enough, and all the rest of it. No different from loads of money with capitalism and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like however you want to look at things, right? One way or another, the pendulum swung far too far in one direction, right? And we've ended up with the hyper-commodification of all things in a bankrupt era of hyper-capitalism, neoliberalism, right? And I use these debt economy, right? Whatever, right? So I use these terms, and sometimes people say to me like, you shouldn't use these terms. People didn't understand them, or the people you're trying to get to understand that if you change the way you spoke about things, it's like I'm not needing the people to understand me. People want to listen to what I'm saying. It's up for them. If they feel interested, they can. Whether I'm not going to condescend them or patronise them or change the name of something to suit them because I didn't think they understand. It's like if you want to understand, you understand, right? The people that definitely do understand are those who are the benefactors of that, the professional middle classes and the bourgeois establishment, and the people who keep installing the same pathetic political class because they would sooner have a middle class person that relates to them than do sort out or help out these working class people that they didn't understand or can't deal with, right? So that class prejudice has become so profound within every element of our society. Here's a thing that I've been making a point about recently with a few friends and stuff like that, or whatever, talking about things. A guy messaged me the other week there, a great guy, Davey, and he says something about, what I learned about socialism and whatever, and I says, listen, let me explain something to you. I says, see 25 years ago or whatever, right, Scottish Parliament, went to Scottish Parliament, and the SSP were in the Scottish Parliament. We had actual socialists in the Scottish Parliament, right? That SSP, whatever we say about Tommy Sheridan and how maybe he collapsed the party or whatever, I'm sure he did. I'm sure there was all kinds of things that were whatever, right? Political parties, such whatever, blah blah blah, right? But it's no the same as the neoliberal political class, right? The SNP spent years grandstanding on its progressive policies of, travel, of prescription charges, all these were all SSP policies that the SNP adopted, right? If it wasn't for the SSP being there, how do we know that these progressive policies that the SNP have spent forever, trading on, as if they're somehow the great givers of all things, like, you know what I mean? They came from the SSP. And why was it important to have the SSP there? Because it was important to have socialists represented in our parliament at some level. Because why? Because they're representing working class people to a certain extent, more than they are now, right? There was working class women in that party, Rosie Kane, all these people, right? And so I was saying to this guy, Davey, I was like, look, back then, to have those, I voted for the SSP as a young man when they come in at that time and all the rest of it, and I was proud to do that. I was proud of my own small contribution to bringing the SSP there. But the thing is that we have not, there's nothing within Westminster, Holyrood, anywhere else, there is no representation of working class people properly in any of our political institutions, right? Anywhere, right? And that's why you've now got parasites like Reform coming along who are no different, right? Just the wolf in sheep's clothing, like complete and utter, like giving it like, oh, we're here to solve the problem. It's like, you're not just dying with opportunists. We know the drill, we know how it works. Fine, whatever, right? But they're able to whip it up and exploit that, right? But people, for example, those same middle classes that were so conscious about going out. I was taking the mick out of this over the last couple of years. It's like, right, okay, Pippa and Tabitha are going out on Saturday with their placards to oppose the genocide. Fabulous, well done, yeah, that's the right thing to do. On Monday they're going to go and vote for their local Labour Party candidate, and you're going, you're having a laugh, are you on Raj? What's the matter with you, right? What's wrong with you, right? You're going to vote for party politics like that, and you understand that
we're in disbelief, people of that can still vote for Labour in North Lanarkshire.
You're kind of going, like, at the point at which, so the point being that all of these middle classes, and you see it on Instagram, they're all going to jump in with the Greens and all the rest of it, right? But that's just them absolving themselves from their conscience, right? That's not bringing any socialist values.
There's a light.
That's not bringing anything there. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
You think so?
And that is an active trade union movement.
That is okay. You did say you were sat at this straight enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I know that thing. You know, this kind of like, you know, we've seen where trade union consciousness begins and ends. It begins with, you know, not nestling the nest of the establishment. You know what I mean? And just becoming.
That's it. People talking about that.
And you know what I can't stand, right? And see this thing about the trade union thing, and it's funny you should say that, right? Because I was slagging off that Ros Foyer thing, the Ros Foyer woman, because she's got
she's got a couple of houses.
It's like, what, 5 houses, right? You know what I mean? You've got 5 houses, right? You're staunch advocate of working class, whatever. Do you know what I mean? And it's that sort of thing where the unions do have that kind of almost quasi-religious kind of thing about them, like, you know what I mean? They're the kind of they're the telephone to God, like we're the telephone with the working people, and it's all with the bollocks, like, do you know what I mean? We're past that stage.
I remember Joanna Baxter, who is now a sitting MP. Joanna Baxter was a very prominent figure within, I think it was the Unison, and basically there was at a time of the janitors dispute, and the janitors' hours were getting cut and they were losing their boiler money, so janitors used to get paid the additional boiler money in the morning. And Joanna Baxter was in there, I will press the red button, I will press the nuclear button for strike action and this, that and the next thing. And then all of a sudden, about a week later, all the guys are going, where's Joanna Baxter? Where is she? And that's what I try to explain to you today. When you've got prominent individuals within the trade union who are coming out, rallying you up and doing all these different things, and then telling you that they're going back into fight, how can you fight with somebody who you're later up the stairway having a cup of tea because it's management and that's where you go, you sit up the stair?
That's the drive.
And you're looking at it and you're going, how effective is a trade union now? Because in my assertion to trade unionism and where it stands, it's
same
lost.
thing with Jim Slavin. I went to there was a meeting. There was a meeting about it was a meeting to do with the guy who was one of the council members from the bin strikes in Birmingham. It was actually brilliant. I forget his name, but he was first class, and he was like, he'd been elected to. He was part of the union thing or whatever. Yeah. He was really good. He did give a good talk. But then I was in this room and everybody was talking and all the rest of it. And I thought I was at a meeting that like just punters were there. And I felt this strange vibe going on, and I was kind of going like, I kind of said, you know, I thought I'm going to say something, because I do essentially to my best of my ability some form of local media alternative representation. So I kind of thought, right, I'll make this point and say, well, listen, I'm trying to set up a wee bit more of an alternative platform. And I kind of went, so I thought I'll say this point to everybody. And I said this point, and I kind of was like going, I never really went down how I would normally expect something like that to go down. Like, you know, like, why? I'm like, oh, whatever, right? I thought it was a whole crowd in that air. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? Right? And then later on, Jim's purely explained to me, he's like, they all ken each other. Everybody in that room. I'm like, what? I was like, he says they're all, and then I've twigged. I'm like, I'm all right. I get it now, right? You know what I mean? Like, they bother in that, all acting, all waiting to ask their question as if it's like they're at a public meeting. It's like, what, you all actually know each other? Do you know what I mean? Get me? Yeah. And that's when I've twigged. I'm like, yous are at it. You know what I'm saying? So that whole side of it, like, that's sort of like, you know, that's when it becomes, for want of a better term, it's almost like cosplay.
It's an old game.
It's
an old game, and it's been perfected. And
exactly
perfected and protected.
Exactly.
But there's a difference now. I think the mantle's changed. I think the SNP has now somehow found that it is the party for working class votes and took that mantle away from
I think that's an element. I think there's a number of reasons why that's occurred.
Yeah.
I think the kind of seductive intoxicant of independence has captured. You know, it's an easy one, isn't it? Scotland, we're for Scotland and that, and it's like, you know, that's an easy one, right? And so they deserve to, you know, that's why, to be honest, right, if
there's work in there as well, but Bob, there's work in there because, again, if you look at it and you go back to the way it used to be, Labour had inherently infiltrated every community council up and down the land. They were involved in everything locally and various other things.
You could argue the work that was in there was that Salmon's referendum.
But that's what I'm saying. That's where it kind of came. It came to the idea when the community council started to fall, everything all started to wane. Then all of a sudden you have this big sort of cheer for independence, and then now everybody's behind that.
Yeah, I think the thing, I don't like all political parties kind of equally, really. Yeah. You know, I don't like the political class. Tend to agree with you. Don't like the political class. Yeah. I know what they are, see what they are, I know exactly how they operate. I've been right next to them. I've stood at the ballot beside them just to get on the fence line.
I've not been in North Lanarkshire. That might change.
We'll get you to stand here.
The point being that I think out of them all, especially in Scotland, because I'm Scottish, you know, for whatever reason, like, you know, I'm here. I think that's why I despise the SNP just that wee bit. I hold that extra level of contempt towards the SNP because they've captured a section of the country,
misled,
and they are absolutely up to their neck in lies and manipulation and control. And I know some of the people, for example. See what people, how are we for time? Are you?
No, you're good. You can keep going.
I'm just saying, like, for example, like, I'm an artist, right? I'm a producer, filmmaker to my best of my ability to do whatever. I've had aspirations to operate in various areas of the arts over the years. Done quite a lot of stuff that people are definitely unaware of. That doesn't really matter at all. But the fact is that what I saw more than anything as an artist, right, as a producer, was I saw post 2014 the culture grab that the SNP did. It was actually happening before 2014. Post 2014. I saw how they wanted to control the narrative of what this country is and what this culture is, right? And I realised something that what was it? I actually wrote something down, something about this, but basically that's when I started to really see.
Is that your own equipment?
The neoliberal control. The sort of the neoliberal control of let me see if I can remember what I put there. I can't remember what it is there. I'll find it. But I basically saw how they had basically taken control of the whole cultural narrative of the country, and basically there was a lot of favouritism going on to those who were kind of acolytes within that
within the arts industry and that.
Pardon?
Within the arts industry,
massively, hugely. These quangos were kind of like, it was a place for basically it more or less became the brew for middle class folk that wanted to just kind of like, that had been sycophantic and apparatchiks to that system. And I saw, especially in Edinburgh Arts, I saw lots of people who had been loyal to the cause at various levels
it's a critique. It's still happening.
Get dollar. Turn into.
It's a critique. It still happens in the Scottish government funding.
Create these sort of proxy kind of like arts collectives or whatever. It's all the bollocks. By and large, very talentless people who got paid a lot of money to kind of fluff their own egos and get to go around the place. But what that actually does is suppresses Scottish culture because it completely and utterly disenfranchises those. It also
if you're not involved in it,
you're not involved in it, right? You can't, because it's difficult. It's hard. It's hard. Now, thankfully, what I do see now in this period over this, I see a shift. There's loads of, and I'm hypercritical of Scottish culture, and I'm hypercritical primarily of mainstream funded Scottish culture because it's controlled. It's it's tepid. It's benign. It's banal. It's terrible. But there is also a whole other side of Scottish culture that exists that is not like that at all, and it's dynamic and it's intuitive and it's full of ingenuity, and it's coming from working class areas often. Especially, I'm a big fan of the Scottish hip hop and rap scene. There's incredible talent across the whole country there, and spanning a broad range of expression, and so that's the sort of stuff that gets me excited. For Scotland, and I think that's the point. Is like, what I would like to see is a recognition that these mainstream organs, if you like, these political organisations, are basically a complete and utter deception, and that there's a way into politics and there's a way into altering how the culture's interpreted that's alternative to that, essentially. That's the kind of...
What was the big scandal a few years ago? And they funded something that was like pornography or something?
That was Creative Scotland.
It was me that was responsible for breaking that. It was me that broke that.
Was it you broke that at the time?
Aye. I broke it, and I broke it on a Saturday morning, and it was being talked about in Holyrood on Monday, and it was being talked about in Westminster by the Thursday. And every single journalist who wrote about that extensively, and they got mileage. They got a lot of mileage. They did. Every single one of them who wrote that and failed to credit me for being the person that did that knows that they did that. I'm not really that bothered because it's just part of the course for how I operate.
We all get it out.
Listen, I do it all the time. If I was to get a quid for everything that I've managed to get, you know,
well, we're coming to the end, but obviously we do have the Scottish Parliament elections coming up. The SNP's coming out with the same mantra and rhetoric to ensure that everybody as part of the gravy train still stays employed after May, and really in effect
providing their credit. The correct words to the correct people.
Yeah, so keeping on the fact that they're going to somehow manage to get an overarching majority for independence, and goodness no, but still expect people to go there and do both votes.
The salmon files right enough, aren't
they? So the Epstein. This is going to be the Epstein files of Scotland.
They've also got your various high-profile court cases that's coming up in March and various other things.
One coming up.
Where do you see the future an independent Scotland, Bob?
The future of an independent Scotland, or
a possibility?
Is there a route?
Is there a route?
Is there a route?
Yeah.
Aye. Of course there is.
What would the route be?
The route to a route to an independent Scottish culture is the complete and utter rejection, like I say, of our mainstream political parties. The party political class is a bankrupt entity, okay? And anybody who still participates in party politics is doing their intellect a disservice, to be polite about it, right? Yeah. There's really no excuse.
Are you just saying that because we're independents?
And we push the independent. We push the independent.
I think the thing is this, right? Somebody might say, well, independents are just, it's in the same system and they're just as susceptible to whatever, and they can't, and it's like, well, you could argue that, right? You know, you could also argue that they're not. They're liberated from the party whip. They can do and say what they want as they please, you know what I mean? And let's put it this way, right? Currently, we're governed by gangsters, right? So maybe we just need to get a few more of our own gangsters. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, you know,
and on that bombshell.
And there's ways to do that.
And on that bombshell.
Well, brilliant hour,
Bob.
By the way,
that was absolutely a pleasure to have you on. And
it was great to be here.
And we'd love to have you back on at some point. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And again, I will definitely be taking a keener look at Edinburgh.
So, what I'd like to do, if that's all right, is for you give yourself a plug. Your own, I mean, you've your own Facebook
social media
page,
channels,
your own social media.
Well, my YouTube channel is Discontent.
Right.
And I have my Twitter is Discontent as well, at Nonny Defeats. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on X, formerly Twitter. That's where I tend to jostle most with the political
the tunes in the background are absolutely
what the X. Well,
exquisite.
What the X is my live stream that I've been doing. I have been doing it on a Friday, but I'm going to shift the time on it. But that's a kind of live participatory surfing doom scrolling of
the best
X.
comment that I heard you make was Ross Greer has still got placenta round him.
Well, tell me, am I wrong?
No, ladies and gentlemen, Bob, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to What's the Point? Well, Gerry, we had Bonnie Prince Bob. What a guest.
Character and a half. Character and a half.
And I think it was interesting to hear a different perspective of other local authorities, because ultimately, again, if you look at Edinburgh in comparison to North Lanarkshire, the level of spend that's available in Edinburgh compared to the level of spend in North Lanarkshire, what Edinburgh choose to spend money on in comparison to what North Lanarkshire spends money on. And again, no doubt, chief executive salaries in Edinburgh in comparison to North Lanarkshire will be worlds apart. And again,
perhaps not.
What do you mean? Roughly about the same.
So Edinburgh, I think Glasgow and Edinburgh are the two biggest. And then North Lanarkshire's fourth.
Right.
So you're not going to be that far, really. I mean, they'll be close, maybe to 300,000, but you're not talking way beyond that.
So tonight we're on TikTok Live, as many of you'll know. So the conversation's going to continue on TikTok Live. We want to hear from you. So Bob is a strong proponent to ensure that local politics in particular, and even to a certain degree wider politics in the Scottish Government, becomes more independent focused. Has the political party served you? Do you feel that your current SNP or Labour politicians currently serve you, your family, and what you hope to see in your local area? Is it a case that perhaps we're completely outdated and wrong, Gerry? Perhaps this rise of reform in Scottish politics is where everything's going to lead to. They are promising that bright new dawn that everybody's hoping for, and maybe it is a case that Lord Offord, or he's no longer Lord, he's just Mr. Offord
he's
for Greenock.
down, Mr. Offord from Greenock. I'll tell you why I'll say no on that, right? When you distill everything down and you look at what reform is, and you look at the big hitters in that, it's Boris Johnson's cabinet.
Of course.
It's Boris Johnson's cabinet. So the very individuals who brought us Brexit and all the disasters that flowed from that are the and who caused the problems are the individuals who are telling you that we're going to bring you out of it by reforming what? Yeah. It's going to be more of the same. Yeah. Absolutely more of the same. One of the things that I liked about Bonnie Prince Bob, but apart from his flowing locks,
he's got very
and all the rest of it,
men like a lion,
was his approach to shows like this that use social media, that use the podcast sort of platform to go through, and about being consistent with it, because it's about that consistency week in, week out, that's going to have the impact that you cannot generally get on through print media or TV media or radio media for people like you and I.
So a big thing is again coming back to it, we are on TikTok just now. Keep the conversation going if you wish. If it's a case that you think that perhaps the critique here in relation to political parties is sometimes too strong, is it a case that you do believe that your local SNP group and your authority is serving you well? Or is it a case that we just need to start being honest with people that the political party system doesn't work at a local level? Because ultimately, again, it's voting, it's people with agendas. They're all, basically, in my opinion, all out to try and curry favour with the wider party nationally, so that they can try and seek higher office at some stage in the future.
Greg, we used to
but perhaps they don't have the ability to get there, Gerry.
Perhaps not.
Perhaps not.
We used to do political highlight of the week, right?
Oh, there is a couple this week, isn't there?
Here's mine.
Right.
I was driving down to Livingston thing on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember which day, and I saw an event as rare as the thingy moon.
Oh, the Hunter's Moon.
Hunter's Moon. And it was Mark Griffin knocking doors next to the Mark Busby Centre.
What, after his picture outside RBS telling everybody, him and Frank McNally.
So it wasn't RBS, it was Bank of Scotland, so Mark Griffin MSP, Frank McNally MP, all the elected councillors, past and present, standing all around the RBS, all ash out the Bank of Scotland, sorry, not RBS, that's already closed. So the last bank in Bellshill closed on the 12th of January this month. No more banking facilities in the whole of that town.
Was there a public apology?
No public apology, certainly not. And by the way, I've not seen that group standing back outside the Bank of Scotland since then, and I doubt very much whether or not we'll see them again. These individuals need to take responsibility for what's happened with that bank. Surely
Frank, because he's in the ears of Douglas Alexander.
They promised, Greg, in the 2017 manifesto, they promised that they would do away with the closure of high street banks. So they weren't going to permit the closure because of all the benefits that come from that. And then after that, they've thrown that away. The banks have started to close. No, but we're going to promise you banking hubs. Well, I'll tell you what, in Uddingston, the Bank of Scotland's closed. Phelps Hill, the Bank of Scotland's closed. If I want to lift any money, I've got to go to Motherwell to lift any more than 250 quid. And it's absolutely shocking what's happened to the high streets. And these Labour MPs and MSPs need to take full responsibility for it, because they're in charge of the banking system, they're in charge of the economy, and they could have put a stop to that, and they didn't do it.
So one of the big questions that came up tonight in relation to the future of Scotland, Gerry, because ultimately, until we start to change the culture or even the fundamental framework of local government, we need to start looking at Scottish government and what that institution really means for lots of working class people in this country. Now, the point that I would make is earlier on the night before we came on air, our good friend Louise Murphy, who hosts the show before us, she was having a sort of debate with our listeners in relation to independence, and what she's saying now is she went for hard no into now she's moderate open, I would say, to a certain degree, or sceptical, and she's looking to be convinced. Now, given the fact that the majority of people, I think, out there who voted yes the last time in relation to 2014, I think that everybody in relation to what was promised and various other things, they knew the delivery of that would never ever be under the Labour's pledge when Gordon Brown came out there with David Cameron to highlight the fact.
Fuel bills, Greg.
So now we fast forward and we end up in a stage where Brexit's happened and we end up in this ludicrous position, and you can't solely point it squarely to the UK, but world politics has completely changed now. It is a completely new map that's presenting itself even week by week. But the point being is now the time for independence? Is it a case that people out there would feel confident enough with regards to that, or do you think that the British unionism and the British parties would make sure that that's capitalised on? Because ultimately, take away Scotland's contribution to the UK, then really in effect, what is England? England is non-existent.
So, no, I mean, there's been lots of debate and topic around this over the years. Oil being one of the main areas, and if the Scottish oil was taken away from the UK balance of trade, what would England have to sell to the world? Not very much, because it doesn't manufacture anything anymore.
Keir Starmer would come in for John Swinney like Venezuela. So
Scotland's bound. Scotland's bound now, and what you see in Scotland as an energy rich nation is that renewables are being built in Scotland in order to power
south
everything down south beyond that.
Yeah,
and
that's infrastructure for water and everything else.
So Scotland, I think the chances for Scottish independence, sadly, because I'd like to see Scotland independent and the sooner the better, but unfortunately I do not see that happening anytime soon. And I think the opportunities that were missed in 2014 and probably in 2015 and 16 when we had super majorities in elections, particularly the election to Westminster where we took 58 of the seats.
We characterised the SNP at a local level going back, I think, a few episodes ago, and where we highlighted that the SNP misled the people in North Lanarkshire, because at that time, if you remember, when we were discussing court cases and various other things, that basically it was that idea and concept of change. And what we says was on that episode that potentially the SNP group in North Lanarkshire misled the public with regards to what that change actually meant. Is it a case that the SNP is misleading the public again with regards to another independence referendum? Because you remember Sturgeon used to be really, really good at this. Get the troops all rallied, we're going to have another referendum, then we get to it and the position would be, no, we can't deliver it, there's no safe function to deliver it, and various things like that. Is it a case that we're going to see that again, this idea of the mantra coming out, because reform's there, we need an independence referendum to break us away, but the reality is there's no function to do it?
I can only speak for myself. I personally feel that line has been rolled out too many times. Now, equally, I believe the same thing is happening with the SNP 1 and 2. They're still going to punt SNP 1 and 2 for the Holyrood election, and ultimately that's going to hurt the drive towards independence if that's what they want. And there are big questions around whether or not the SNP actually want independence, or they're quite happy with the trappings of power to be the country's largest elected party and to have control over constituency offices and branches and all the rest of it.
If you look at councils up and down the land, there's no dominance of the SNP at a local authority level. So although they're dominating 19 years in relation to Holyrood, there's no dominance at a local level. So and I appreciate that Scottish people have always voted differently and tactically various other things when it comes to each election. But if you start to look at it now, surely the ship sailed, because ultimately you wouldn't imagine a more bizarre situation where we are politically right now, where the right has now got a mouthpiece in Farage and various other things to start to come forward, and the left is just non-existent. So really, in effect, you've got three mainstream parties sitting in the middle. One is obliterated itself in relation to its previous and former position within Westminster.
It'll be back.
Oh, it will be back.
It still exists. It just exists as something called reform. But it's the Conservative Party. Make no bones about that.
But I just think it's rather defunct, to be perfectly honest, because if you look at Labour now, and that's why I thought it was important to ask that question, are they truly representative of the working class people?
No.
Because ultimately, if you look at them now, it would be hard to describe what the Labour Party actually is and stands for now. No. And if anybody's listening to TikTok Live and wants to correct me, by the way, please do, because I'm all ears with regards to what it is the actual Labour Party represents, because it doesn't represent working class values. No. If you look at the policies that are being developed by Starmer and co, and especially even ones that are being chased by Anna Sarwar, again, there's nothing there that would entice me if I was just a normal person in the street, say, do you know what, Labour, you're getting my vote again. The days of Jack McConnell are forgotten. I'm going to come home.
What are they going to bring? I mean, what are they going to bring that will make a difference to my day-to-day life? They promised that my bills were going to drop by £300. My energy bills were going to drop by £300. They've increased by about £490. They're almost £500 more expensive a year than they were.
Aye.
So, what are they bringing?
Do you know something? My biggest critique of Labour, and you're talking about going back even to the 90s, the biggest critique I always had is coming through local authority work and various other things. It was always somebody's son, somebody's daughter. Suzanne McLeod's a prime example of that, an Airdrie candidate, and by the way, I'm no besmirching her at all, but Suzanne McLeod's an Airdrie candidate. Her mother was the MP for Cumbernauld. She's got political dynasty there in relation to that political capital. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but there's that element of nepotism that exists within political parties, and the thing for me always was within the SNP, don't get me wrong, there was nepotism, but you look at it, it wasn't so forthright, whereas the Labour Party always had it forthright. Now you're looking at the SNP now becoming a long established political sort of entity, and really in effect we're seeing the same levels of nepotism. If you go to Jamie Hepburn, and his partner or wife was involved in the party in a senior role, and others are involved in, and then you start to get to a local level, you look at the Stubbsies, two of them are married, and again they're best pals now, a councillor and others. And I'm sure it's the same in the Labour group, I'm sure it's the same in the Tories. But again, that idea that you're only filling positions with family members or people you know, and it's just absolutely bizarre. Fulton McGregor, the MSP.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
His brother Gus McGregor, and Leslie Mitchell was Gus McGregor's former partner. So again, you've got all these things in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably more depressed about the picture of politics in North Lanarkshire than I've ever been. We're coming up to an election, and I genuinely don't know whether I'm going to draw a dirty picture on the ballot paper or not. Certainly for my constituency vote, I don't know that I can.
It's a very difficult one, isn't it?
I think I know who I'll vote for in my regional vote.
I know who's getting my vote in a regional vote, but as I said again, it becomes perverse when it comes to constituency, because who's the lesser of the beasts, innit? That's basically where it stands.
I don't know in good conscience whether I could vote for anybody on the constituency list. There you go.
And another bit for me in that is as well, within that constituency list, if you look at both parties, I would say Labour and the SNP, don't get me wrong, I think that potentially how they deal with allegations of sexual misconduct and various other things like that'll be a consideration for a lot of folks.
But you never know what might happen in between times, like especially for the SNP. I think that we might keep our fingers crossed that a report, an investigative report into the shenanigans that happened in 2022 that were promised by Hamza Yusuf, that report might come out, and that might change my view entirely, because that might suggest that there's going to be a complete review of the vetting process. We're going to make sure that everybody who has allegations of misconduct before are fully vetted through the process, rather than cherry picking individuals.
So listen, we've got a few
to be
Facebook
vetted.
comments. We've got Chris, who is a long time supporter of the show. He's basically says that Labour need to make sure that if they're putting any material out, they're putting it out accurately. And why not give the English an opportunity for their own parliament? Why not give the English an opportunity for their own parliament? They seem to be subsidising a handful of people for up here. So again, if you look at it, how influential is a Scottish individual with regards to how Keir Starmer's going to run effectively the country?
The English Parliament never stopped.
No,
I mean,
we
know that. We know that the Scottish Parliament was dissolved in 1707, but the English Parliament did not stop. No. So England has always had its Parliament, and England continues to have its Parliament. It just so happens that they've managed to convince a large number of Scots that English Parliament is their mother Parliament too. They've not fooled me.
Well, again, I think that there's a critical point being made here as well with regards to reform was waiting street the weekend. Never seen the guy went away for the doorstep so quickly. But again, Malcolm Wofford's shouting the night or at the weekend on the Sunday show that independence should be paused for 10 years and let's not do anything in relation to that. Let reform some sort of political force in this country. I find it rather bizarre. Rather bizarre.
As far as I'm concerned, he's a snake oil salesman.
A snake oil salesman.
That is not Gerry. I think he's not the kind of character that I would want to see involved in Scottish politics. But he's going to fit right in with the current crew that are there at the forum. Boris's old pals. So he'll fit in there like a glove.
Well, listen, it's 8:35. My goodness, time flies. Indeed. When you're having fun. If you haven't already done so and you're watching us on TikTok, please go into our page or our channels and give us a wee like and a follow. It's greatly appreciated. And it's the same if you've missed any episode, please go into YouTube and you will see everything on there for all our back catalogue and everything we've ever says about anybody. Just go back and give yourself a wee giggle. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there tonight scribing away, Gerry, in relation to taking notes and making sure that they're up to date with everything.
And once again, Greg, I want to send an apology out to those individual. To those who were, looking forward to the programme being put out in podcast last week. Aye. And to apologise to the public.
David done his hair for it. David done his hair.
That our production guys, made some errors.
Yeah.
So, but we'll try and get as many of the rough cuts. To give people a flavour of what we actually discussed.
Well, we will definitely be back next week, Gerry. I don't really think we're ready to give this up yet, are we?
Oh, no.
Absolutely not. Not in the run up to a court case anyway.
I wouldn't think so. I think we're doing and saying
public service
the things that private individuals should be doing and saying when they're acting as private citizens in their private time and in their private life.
Well, this is the best hobby I have, Gerry. So
it's a fabulous hobby, Greg, and I'm glad, like me, you enjoy it so much.
On that note, Gerry Brennan, thank you very much for joining us, good folk on TikTok. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back to our usual hijinks and shenanigans next week, and really in effect, see you then.
See you then. Cheers.
Thanks for your low
information.
opinion of me, Councillor Crichton, but I understood it perfectly
not at all.
clear.
Not at all.
And I don't need any lectures. I do appreciate that. But I thank you for your comment anyway.
I have exorcised the demons. This house is clear.